Jako, welcome. You have a very interesting fund, a fund that looks at mega trends into the future. First of all, what do you call that fund, and how would you define a mega trend?
Thank you, Theo. Yeah, it's something that we're really excited about within the business. It's called the Momentum FutureTrends Fund. It's a fund that we launched towards the latter part of 2022, and it's really something that's been in the making for the last 2 and a bit years. Given the research that we've done, both within the investment team, together with the research team as a whole. And in essence, what we, as you quite rightly mentioned, it's a focus on mega trends and thematic investing. And what's very important about it is first of all, to understand what it means. So if I look at mega trends, it really refers to something, given the words, of course, given mega, which is big and important, and trend being something that plays out over time. So in essence, the mega trends really refer to big structural changes that are evident within the world and within the global economy. And we see it as something that's looking to play out over the next 5, 10, or even 15 years. So it's really a very long-term mindset and frame of mind that we're talking about. So it's less about whether or not inflation is going to change or interest rates are going to adapt, etc., over the shorter term. And more importantly, I think some of these trends tend to happen naturally as a consequence of technological advancement, and whereas others are forced upon us based on certain economic conditions, or as we've witnessed more recently, the war in the Ukraine.
So it's a mixture of things that develop naturally and also things that gets forced on us. But you've actually gone one step further. You've identified 6 of these mega trends. And let's talk about these.
We've identified 6 very specific and very direct mega trends that we want the portfolio to be exposed to. As I mentioned earlier, they need to have economic relevance. And when we start thinking about incorporating that into a portfolio, they also need to have value from an inflation beating perspective. So we've identified 6 of these mega trends that really focus on things like climate change, demographic change, how technological advancement is aiding us. And added to that, something that for some of the viewers may actually sound very interesting, being space exploration, the movement of economic might, so to speak, from the west to the east, and then lastly also lifestyle changes and themes that are related to how we all live our daily lives. And here I'm referring to things like online streaming and online gaming, for example. What is quite important for us is that we have, over and above the 6 main trends, we've identified various themes underneath that support these themes. There has to be a very close correlation between the two in order for it to make sense within a portfolio.
Now that is the critical point. You've now identified these trends. There's themes in these trends. But how do you bridge the gap to build a portfolio, an investment portfolio, based on these trends? The challenge is obviously that one needs to adhere to growth and to risk return profiles, but how do you build a portfolio based on your trends?
That's exactly it. I guess that's also where the theory and the practice comes together. And what, as part of this ongoing process and research effort back in the office, we spent an exorbitant amount of time in terms of not just identifying, but also these trends, but also identifying those themes, as we mentioned. Now, from an execution perspective, where it becomes live is we are actually in the portfolio, if you look at it today, we have exposure to a range of exchange-traded funds, ETFs, that gives us a very direct exposure to those themes. Added to that, for us also, is we have a wealth of information and systems that we analyze this portfolio through. So we have a finger on the pulse in terms of understanding what the inherent risks of this portfolio is at any given point in time. So we know what our country exposures are, what our risk exposures are, etc., in order to manage it as an aggregate portfolio. And I think what's quite important for me is that this is a portfolio that consists out of various themes and various trends, as opposed to just a very specific very single-minded theme that does carry quite an amount of risk with it.
And the key is that all of these themes are focused on big mega trends into the future. Where does this portfolio fit into a client's investment portfolio?
Yeah, that's a very important question, Theo, and I do appreciate that clients have different risk appetites, and of course that's where spending some time with a financial advisor does make a lot of sense. For us, again, knowing and appreciating the longer term nature of this portfolio, we know for a fact that at times it would behave and look very differently from a traditional benchmark. So whether you look at it in volatility terms or in tracking error terms, we know that tends to be quite high over time. So therefore the holding period needs to be quite long as well. And taking all of that into consideration and bringing it back to some of the balanced portfolios that we manage, we've actually allocated a fairly small allocation to that portfolio alongside our traditional long-only funds for exactly that reason, that we know it is volatile and it could actually look very different at times.
But so there is an allocation in your standard balance fund, but there's also the opportunity for clients, if they would like to increase their exposure to these mega trends, that they can directly invest in the portfolio and upweight the exposure to these mega trends.
That's exactly it, and I think that's the beauty of it, because when we looked at putting this portfolio together, we wanted to build, again, aligned to our outcomes-based investment philosophy, a portfolio that we believe is well diversified, whilst still answering the questions or still being aligned to these mega trends. So most definitely, the portfolio is available as a single unitized unit trust for investors to access.
Jako, thank you very much. It's certainly exciting, and I'll follow the portfolio, and I'll also follow the changes in mega trends as we move along. Jako, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.